my strength is I'm genuinely interested in people and getting to know them. We really love the partners that we have. I've maintained the connection with them to be
Hmm.
genuine and honest about what I can and can't do. Take the interest in what it is that he does and being able
Hmm.
to help him in that professional field. You're not getting that anywhere else.
Hello and welcome to the Success Differently podcast. My name is Michelle Sorgaroli and I'm your host today. And I am being joined by Damon Steele. Now, Damon is the co-founder and director of partnerships to Pilot Mortgages. He has started his journey, as I understand it, in financial planning in 2007 and so. And around 2010, I believe, is where he and his partner Tyler founded Pilot Mortgages. He found his place in financial services, as you will, and mortgages drew him in, which I'm going to get into more later. We want to have a conversation about that. So since 2010, Pilot Mortgages has funded over 5,000 mortgages and $3 billion in asset value, which is remarkable. And I think that probably has a lot to do with Damon's commitment and his partner and team commitment necessarily to really strong communication, education to empower clients, and there's a real commitment to a really smooth process. The big mission is to give clients the ability to buy a home in Vancouver, which in and of itself is a fantastic mission. So wonderful on that. This commitment to all of that probably has a lot to do with why Damon and his partner are called the young guns in the industry, leading the industry to new heights, and having been ranked in the Canadian Mortgage Professionals Top 100 status for the past several years in a row. Excuse me, in a row. So I want to also highlight that Damon actually has a real interest in innovation and doing things a little differently and really leading the industry to new heights, which I've seen just through some of the work that you're doing, Damon. So it's really interesting to see that. You also have an interest in creative arts, as I may have extracted. So
Yeah.
I'm just so excited about where this conversation is going to go. And I just want to say thank you for being here. And I'm really excited to see where we go from here.
My pleasure and what a great intro. So thank you.
So very welcome.
Yeah.
It's always delightful to, kind of give the arc of the story. And, I did notice in your story a little bit, just, because I did a little bit of research. From 2007, when you started your journey in financial services until you discovered that mortgages were your thing. Can you tell us, you just share a little bit about that piece for you? Why financial services in the first place? What kind of
Yep.
attracted you there? And then how'd you get into mortgages?
Yeah, and it's funny because I wish it was like this beautiful, grandiose story, but a lot of stuff is just as a matter of, you know, changes in climate, in terms of the industry and getting into financial planning and being in managing investments when you're like in your early 20s,
Yeah.
just as the economy is going through turmoil in terms of recessions
Yeah.
and global changes. It's tough to have the confidence of a group of clients when you're so young and immature at that time. So I'll start back. So I started working in banking as I was going to university. That was, I was doing both somewhat part-time. Wasn't quite ready to put my full attention towards either one. But
Hmm.
through that, kind of continued to develop my career working in banking. Then I enrolled into BCIT's program for financial management.
Hmm.
On the recommendation from one of the mentors that I was working with, he was like, "I think this is a really good fit for you."
Nice.
And in tandem was working as an account manager and then doing investment management for a few banks and credit unions at that time.
Can I pause you for just a
Sure,
moment there? Can I ask a question?
sure.
So your mentor saw something in you and
Yeah.
said he thought this might be a really good fit for you. What do you think he might have been pulling on there?
Well, I was, when you're young, you don't necessarily have a young family like that. You can spend a lot more time socializing, getting to know one another. I
Mm.
think um, my strength is just because I'm genuinely interested in people and getting to know them and asking them questions that are less superficial and being able to kind of get a bit deeper.
Mm.
And um, and I think for some people that can be off-putting, but for others who also appreciate the depth, I know for myself, as you start to develop those relationships, the one thing that I always hold in my head after meeting somebody for the first time is how many questions or did they really ask anything about myself? And I have a tendency to like sometimes not give them that window because I'm usually just asking them so many questions to learn more
Mm-hmm.
about them. But people who show a genuine curiosity in you as a person and not
Mm-hmm.
and not just in the professional side, it's like that's where you build all those bridges. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for him, at least from my experience, and like bear in mind, I'm still like in my early 20s, right?
Still a young
It would,
gun.
yeah, exactly. So, for him, it was like I was interested in how he got to where he was. He had
Mm,
quite a mixed background. What he was doing personally to grow his net worth and support his family. And so, um, yeah, I didn't hesitate to just ask those questions and develop that relationship. And I think and he also had the character that would want to be the type of boss that would motivate and push you to new heights.
mhm.
So it
And
was like
you,
a bit of luck.
yeah, in a way, and recognizing, I think you've just drawn on that piece where you value depth in the
Mm,
relationship, right? That's something that's actually really important to you. You just communicated that.
yeah.
So finding a place where you are able to do that,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Certainly financial services on some level will offer that to, no matter where you're sitting. Mortgages is a really interesting one because there's a lot riding on it,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine. So I can see where that connection happened for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So so yeah, working from that, had an interest in the financial planning component of it. Moving forward, in terms of my career, it was a tough time in that industry. And so, in conjunction with doing the investment management, I was also involved with the company at the time that I was working for, doing business development for their mortgage broker side that they had just grown.
Okay.
So they were just starting kind of a new initiative to grow out their mortgage broker business. And so I was also helping with business development and underwriting of applications, kind of like just doing everything at that time because I had
Hmm.
experience in lending while I was also doing kind of the account management side. And through that, ended up connecting with a number of top performing brokers where it gave me a lot of exposure to the industry,
Hmm.
um, and just the impact that it has, and especially as a young professional, the one aspect, like uh, I've grown up in BC my whole life, and I, it's hard not to say like the pinnacle of at least when you're in like your early 20s, the pinnacle is home ownership, right? It's that's the goal. It's what your parents have always talked about in terms of like, property and aggregating property and all of that. And I know that now, there's a you got to diversify and there's other elements that come into it, but like it's that's such a tangible and meaningful um uh thing to do. And so
Hmm.
to be able to steer clients and be able to help clients
Mm,
to achieve that, and like these clients, like obviously we're working with people who are finding us online or referrals and whatnot, but a lot of these people were my friends,
yeah.
right? Friends of mine who have grown up with the same um, belief, but have always had disbelief in their ability to be able to do it, right?
Mm,
Because it's not only this amazing thing that everybody really wants to achieve in terms of like home ownership, but there's so many forces that you hear from friends, family, media that say it's impossible.
right.
You can't do that. That turning that on its head and being able to show people by following this plan, we can get you here. And whether it's in the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, we can get you here as long as we follow a plan.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I can hear the sense of meaning. You started with saying you saw these top performing producers and that you could see the impact it had. And I was immediately
Mm,
thinking, what is that impact that caught your attention? And you just articulated that. In terms of what I wrote was I said you turned disbelief into belief
mm,
and into reality
hmm.
ultimately, right? And when that happens, what happens for you in that moment when that happens?
Well, if you get the feedback, sometimes it's like you have those clients who they just give you exactly what you're hoping for, which is the appreciation of like, I couldn't believe that I actually able to accomplish this, right? This
Hmm.
goal. So like, who doesn't like to hear something like that?
Yeah.
Now when I hear that, I tell people to leave it as a Google review. But
Hmm. That's the marketing side of you coming
yeah,
out.
at the
Thank
time
you,
it was
and
yeah. At the time it was just as rewarding to hear it from people and
uh-huh.
like to hear the genuine like and it could come from people who never believed that they could ever buy their first home. It could be coming from people who are now moving up and are looking to add an extra bedroom because they're planning on having a child. Like this
Hmm.
is such a significant milestone in the growth of themselves personally.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
that and I've experienced myself, having bought homes and having, renovated them and now having a child and like all of the how interconnected it is to both your financial plan and your family plan. Um,
Hmm.
it's I can now get it. I get it, right? From people who are like, this is such a big accomplishment for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I guess it's the satisfaction of knowing that I've made a difference in someone's life.
Hmm.
Um, and from there, like how if you want to develop trust and moving it back into a professional sense, it's like once you've accomplished that with someone, like referrals, recommendations, um, you know, all of the things that you are hoping to continue to grow in your professional
Hmm.
sense will just come from it.
Right. Question for you. When you used to talk about developing trust, and everybody theoretically understands what that means, but
Mm.
everybody has a slightly different angle on that. I'd love to
Mm.
hear your story about developing trust and how do you know when you have it?
Mm. I think a lot of people will initially speak with me. Let's say they were recommended to me by a friend or another professional, and and I don't know if this is a BC thing,
Hmm.
could be a Canada thing, could be a just normal thing, people thing. But there is an expectation, right? That I'm about to get sold. I'm
Hmm.
about to get put into something that is really for the benefit of, the broker or the advisor,
Right.
as opposed to my own personal benefit.
Yeah.
And I think that I spend so much time working with people um, to try and identify what is the most beneficial solution for them.
Hmm.
Um, that when people are like, well, where do you get paid in this? Right? Whether let's say it's a conversation, it's a goodwill conversation about like, how can you improve the terms of your existing mortgage? And there's really nothing there for me to genuinely sink my teeth into
Hmm.
where we can assist and our compensation is derived, but I can just help them with
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
That's, I think, where maybe it's not an immediate transaction now, but that's the
Hmm.
client for life.
Gorgeous. So you're playing a long game,
Yeah.
right? You're playing a long game. And that's an interesting thing in your industry, especially because mortgages can be a long game.
Hmm.
Right? The number of transactions you might have someone only transact on a mortgage every, long cycle. It might be 3 years, 5 years, or even longer,
Hmm.
right? In a mortgage. So when you're playing that long game, how do you continue? What do you do to reinforce that trust in you and to be remembered for
Yeah.
that? Hmm.
Well, it's a combination of having an impact initially, right? So that people can recognize and like, you kind of have to like, you know, let them know what you're doing, right? Because sometimes people are under the impression occasionally they're like they just think that I may be paid by someone, right?
Right.
Like, if they're
They're
dealing
not
with their
asking a
bank.
question necessarily, right? So how do
Yeah.
you let them know what you're doing in a gentle way or in an effective way?
Um, I'll tell them, outright, right from the beginning of the initial conversation. Let's say if let's take something that's pretty relevant now, like a mortgage renewal, for
Hmm.
example, right? Which is
Hmm.
something we deal with all the time. There's a massive wave of renewals coming up. But if, let's say, for instance, if someone doesn't necessarily need to make any major changes to their mortgage,
Mm-hmm.
they're content with the mortgage amount that they have. They have no need to extend amortization to reduce payments, which sometimes people might have cash flow constraints. So that's something that's important for them to do. But let's say they don't really need to change anything, right? Maybe what's best for them in terms of their um, preserving their time and energy, sending me documents and doing all that kind of stuff, is to just help them renegotiate better terms with their existing lender,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let them know I'm not paid by them for you doing this. Whether it's somebody that came to me, referred to us, that I've never worked with in the past, or even existing clients that we've worked with before who are coming up for renewal, we still need to stay in touch. Obviously, we still
Right.
need to connect with them. We still need to ask the questions and dive deeper into determining whether there's a reason for them to make a change as
Mm-hmm.
well, right? So if we're
Mm-hmm.
not so there's two elements in this. We can't just say
Yeah.
this is one size fits all solution for everybody. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like if we're identifying like you're in that later stage of life where you're really just trying to pay this thing off, or trying to get
Mm-hmm.
this thing paid down. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have any immediate needs to, withdraw equity to be able to do a renovation or to gift money to your kids. Um, Anything or like let's say do leverage investment, whatever it may be for them. We'll dig, but
Mm-hmm.
if we're not there, then we'll be like, look, at the end of the day, I don't want to waste your time. I want to be able to guide you towards the right solution. And there will come a time where you will need me, right? There will come a time where you do need to give some money to your kids because if your kids are going to be buying a place anytime soon, I'm sorry to say they can't save the money these days, right? It's really challenging to be able to get there without parental assistance. And that can come in a number of ways, whether they're depleting an investment portfolio to help, gift, or they're taking out equity, which is often the case. And so I can
Mm-hmm.
support them at that, and I can help their kids,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that letting people know there's no real value for me to assist.
Right
I'm not
now.
compensated for doing this, but I want
Mm-hmm.
to support you in this. And you know, I guess the currency that I can take in that is that can I keep your existing mortgage information on hand and reach out to you on, its anniversary to remind you of your
Mm-hmm.
prepayment privileges? And maybe by virtue of that conversation, we're
Mm-hmm.
now in needs territory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. You're really speaking to talking to the client need. And I think the thing that I really want to highlight here, and I said this at the very beginning around your communication, open and transparent communication. This is a next level of open and transparent communication because not only are you helping and communicating and sharing with them uh, needs and what you're doing, but you're also letting them know I'm not paid and that's
Mm,
okay. And you're making the ask
mhm,
in a very kind and warm way. You're not saying, "Hey, this is an expectation." It's just, I'm hoping that at some point this is going to result in the trust that would encourage you to do business with me and
mhm.
my team, right?
Yes.
Um, so I'm curious about where is this? A lot of people are afraid of that, right? A
Mm,
lot of people are afraid in the process to say, well, I'm not to talk about the money, to say they just don't want anyone to know they're not getting paid. And they think a lot of people will think that they can just do the goodwill work
mm,
and somehow it's going to come back. And it often doesn't
mhm,
because there's an assumption that there's payment happening,
mhm,
right? How did
mhm.
you come upon this strategy for, and just to honor that value of yours around open communication?
Well, okay, that's a great question. So, one element in our industry that is not really spoken about is access to lending. And so, what a lot of brokers have a tendency to do is only highlight and recommend products that are offered by lenders that compensate us behind the scenes. And it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like, to like, most people's expectation, the one of the benefits of working with a broker is I don't have to pay for it.
Right.
And um, there are many lenders that compensate us. There are some that don't. And those ones that don't may offer specific programs, policies that are better for the client.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the past, when I first started, I would just hope that people would never ask me about working with a specific lender. I have all my banking with a specific lender. Can you do anything with them? Because I didn't have the courage to
Right.
be able to say, I can assist you with the planning of this, but in order for me to be able to assist you with it, I have to charge you a fee to arrange it, right?
Hmm.
I didn't value the expertise that I carried and my understanding of the policy or even the great relationships that I have at those institutions to help navigate people through.
Beautiful. Hmm.
So, by virtue of realizing that clients ultimately don't care about who pays you, whether it's the client or whether it's the lender. But what they do value is transparency about where compensation is coming from
Hmm.
and getting what's the best deal for them.
Right. It's the
And so,
value, right? People
so
pay for
rather,
value.
exactly. So
Hmm.
rather than me assuming that a client would never want to pay for me, I'd rather just lay the cards on the table and say, you brought me in here as a total third party in all of this, right? Not you did the reason why you're not dealing with a mortgage specialist at RBC is because you wanted somebody that had the bench strength to know the whole market and guide you towards the right solution. And so um, and as long as you present that to the client, you don't just blindside them by it. Like you don't just like at the 11th hour when they're trying to complete on their home, you're like, hey, by the way, the only way for me to do this is like, you're going to have to pay my fee, but this is a good deal. So trust me on this.
Hmm.
If you prepare them well in advance to say, this is
Hmm.
going to be unlike what you've maybe dealt with in the past with other mortgage brokers, here's the why.
Hmm.
I am going to provide you with a number of solutions, some of which
Hmm.
that compensate me and some of those that do not.
Hmm.
Those that do not, I would have to charge you a fee for arranging it and I'll provide that to you in advance so you can make the decision. And so most people, I think at least most astute or um, existing like high net worth people, which we often will be working with, people who own businesses,
Right.
they're like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course I would like, I'm here for your expertise. I want you to provide the guidance. Um, so long as it's relative to what the compensation might be across the board, right? I'm not just like
Hmm.
increasing my fees because I'm going to a different external
Yeah.
provider. I'm trying to keep it flat across the board, but because I'm going to be able to take care of this for you and
Hmm.
steer you in the right direction from the beginning, there's a value to that. And so
Excellent.
once we started doing more of that,
Yeah.
that's where there is a value that's associated with
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. This is so what I'm hearing in summary is that you had the courage to highlight where there are conflicts of interest, if you will,
Hmm.
and make sure that that was tabled and understood, and also had the courage to plant your value on the table and have a discussion about it,
Right.
right? Having the courage to do that, which to your point is actually a differentiator. And
Mm,
it develops trust so quickly
hmm.
because the conflicts of interest are transparent,
Hmm.
right? When those conflicts of interest are transparent, people tend to trust much more quickly,
Right.
right? And then it's our job to validate that those are actually true
Hmm.
as we do. And I'm sure you have process around that. So, we're speaking. I mean, I have no doubt that this approach has really supported you in terms of playing the long game and generating the kind of referral network and whatnot that you've had. The other thing that I've noticed through some of your other materials that I've seen online, there's a lot of collaboration
Mm,
with you. It seems that, with other professionals or with client advisors. And so, how does that factor into this formula of
mm.
transparent communication, ease of process, which I know is a really big thing for you as well, and the education part?
Right. Well, and that's why my title is Director of Partnerships, right? So in conjunction with having been a mortgage broker for 15 years, my specific role within Pilot is
Hmm.
to work with financial advisors, wealth advisors, planners, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
as well as realtors and other business professionals that tend to be referring parties, right,
Right.
in
Hmm.
whatever facility. And it's to support them with where they need support.
Hmm.
And so if it's advisors, for example, as one element of it, um, what are some of the programs that may apply specifically to their type of client profile,
Right.
right? So if it's, let's say, you know, seniors who are, looking at their investment portfolio and they're, drawing down too much and it's slowly being eroded and they have some cash flow constraints that they're going to be coming up. Like, how can we maybe tap into equity, as opposed to just downsizing altogether and,
Mm-hmm.
pulling that out?
Mm-hmm.
Or, for instance, maybe it's leverage investment. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's another option that they would want to explore. And what are the best ways in which we can facilitate that? Because
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, if you're retired and you walk into your bank to get a line of credit, it's going to be a lot harder because you don't necessarily have the income that you'd had before.
Right.
But that's not a one size fits all solution. So that it may differ from lender to lender. So being able to navigate that,
Mm-hmm.
that's suitable for clients. It could be, as like another example, we tend to work a lot with family lawyers. Family lawyers, obviously, if there's like separation and other
Mm-hmm.
elements that come with that, per- letting them know what are some of the costs associated with, disposition of a property and paying out a mortgage, but also like what if one of the spouses who is planning to remain in the home can then use a buyout to
Mm-hmm.
to to help the other spouse while they move on. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like by having a conversation with them about identifying what the client need is, I can start to articulate what is going to be the solution that's going to be this suitable fit for the client.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
so my role is specifically that. That's all I
Around,
do,
it's
right?
an
So if it's
interesting.
if it's like a client, let's say we've now identified the need for the client, we're going to be able to assist with it. That's where the rest of my team will come in to be able to start the application process, submit it to the lender, collect documents, get this approved, get it funded, get the funds to
Mm-hmm.
whoever it needs to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But for myself, it's starting to tap into where that specific advisor, lawyer, realtor's needs are, for their clients and be able to meet them.
Right. So it's, as you know, I'm all about value and also differentiation is my thing. But what I'm hearing here is this collaborative environment. You're creating an ecosystem, right?
Mm,
So the client who's seeking the lending, if you will, the mortgage,
hmm
they are getting value from you, obviously, as we've already articulated, and the partner is also
mm,
getting business value from you. This is a really interesting piece here because when your partner's clients, your referral source, if you will, let's say an advisor has a client and you're serving that client. When you serve the client in a meaningful way, of course, the advisor is thrilled and
mm,
they're going to continue those referrals. But when you serve the advisor in a meaningful way to help their business grow, that's
hmm
next level,
mm,
right? So hence success differently, and you're differentiating yourself from your peers because you're seeing the whole pool
hmm
of the ecosystem
hmm
in terms of elevating everybody in the ecosystem as opposed to just your client or maybe just pilot,
right.
your own company. The whole ecosystem is elevated. So this is something that, I mean, as you know, I've talked about it already, but I focus on people work with me to help them differentiate their services. They work with me to help them identify that unique value and then also turn it into great results for themselves and their other parties. What I often notice particularly in financial services and also in transactional stuff like mortgage brokerage, for example, is that there's this belief that it's hard to differentiate. It's so commoditized and you're all doing essentially the same thing, saying the same thing. As you're elevating your industry to new heights, how do you see this happening in your business or your industry at large for that matter?
Yeah, I think it's the social media obviously has played a big role in like in our industry where I
Mm,
think a lot of it, a lot of it is educational material, right? So like
hmm.
people providing kind of like education about, how to get started and whatnot. But I think that it's getting to a point now where um, a lot of the people in our industry are specifically only doing the marketing. And so while it might initially attract people to start working with a specific advisor or whatnot, um, the the actual experience of working with the advisor or the team is so unpersonal.
Hmm.
And so where I think what I think is probably what's the most um, important element for us to be able to work towards. And I think it speaks to, like, what we essentially are doing, which is developing trust and goodwill, is getting into that personal depth and being able to make recommendations that are tailored to a specific need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're speaking, you made a point really early on here. You said you talked about education. People are doing education on social media. The interesting thing about the education piece is that it's because so much of it is happening, it's also commoditized.
Mm,
So that marketing of education is less and less valuable,
mhm,
right? As we see it going forward. And often that marketing or that education, what I'm seeing anyway, is that a lot of it is either pre-written.
mm,
It's somebody else's content, or it's something that has been written that they've paid a service for, that type of thing. We see a lot of
mhm.
that.
Right.
Yeah. So when education turns into a commoditized entity, and the marketing is the focus and not the experience
Mm,
of the specific individual, it's that's where things start to go wrong, right?
mhm,
And people don't
mhm.
understand, why is this not working? So how is Pilot doing things differently with because I know education's a big thing for you in terms of empowering your people. How are you doing things differently so that it isn't seen as a commoditized exercise?
Our industry is just constantly changing,
Oh
in
yeah.
terms of lending, lenders' appetite for certain um,
Mm,
geographic locations, for income types, for specific professionals.
hmm
So I think that having, having a good understanding of what, a lender might be doing at certain times and being able to highlight specific programs that might be suitable to,
hmm
like, for instance, if it's a partner of ours, like, if I have a investment advisor who almost explicitly works with um, dentists and
Right.
new dentists, right? Who are the lenders that are best tailored to that type of professional? And being able to convey to them, like, here's the plan and the approach. Here's, if for instance, you want to be able to pass some of this information along to your clients as well,
Yeah.
and get them prepared for,
Yeah.
like, if they're intending to buy another property and whatnot. So I think it's just continuing as we do, so many transactions every month. We get exposure to what, the ebb and flow of what the industry might be doing,
hmm
and then I'll take that kind of like experience in the trenches and then pass that along to the partners.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I'm just having so much fun here. I'm lighting up like a firecracker because I'm just hearing so many exciting things. One of the things I like to talk about is moving from what I call a technical expert, meaning you know your craft, right? You know it well, you know how to do it.
Hmm.
So you're a technical expert, and becoming instead a creative master.
Mm,
And the step into creative mastery speaks about the creativity in the craft,
hmm.
right, in your business, and how you are, in your case, you're learning to very specifically nuance and tailor what you're doing
Hmm.
for people, for very specific needs as you're going through that.
Hmm.
Um, some people would argue that's a very time intensive exercise.
Hmm.
And others like yourself are seeing that that makes you, it ranked as the top 100. And it also gives you the $3 billion in market value or mortgage values, whatnot. So I am curious because I alluded to this earlier. You're interested in innovative and the creative arts and whatnot. And I can see, obviously, if you take a look at your website and some of the work that you and your partner Tyler are doing, if you take a look at that, you have a creative energy that is
Mm,
coming through. How do you see Pilot as an expression or an artistic expression? How does that
mm.
work for you? I'm curious.
Oh, well, so I've played in bands my whole life. I've really
Ooh.
and I've been music is an important element in my life. And being able to uh write material and create your own thing is part of, like, what gives me joy. And
Oh,
so this is going to sound super cliche, but how it translates to the professional
perfect.
side is, um because we have so much variety in
hmm
lending selection to choose from, right? And,
hmm
and, and lender policies and whatnot, the creative to logistic um, work that you can do with clients that are trying to do something complicated is really exciting
There you
because
go.
uh, being able to, let's say, for instance, use a program of one lender specifically to help with creating a new opportunity to purchase another property through another, and being able to kind of balance all of those specific programs together and kind of working through the mess and untangling it so that we can eventually accomplish something that no one thought was even possible. Um, and it's funny because like my business partner who he is um, a lot more like, straight line. Let's try and focus on simplicity and doing that. And I come in here and I'm like, we need to do this. And like, this is how we're going to do it. So
Oh.
it's great because working together, I have a tendency to sometimes really over get a bit too tangled up in certain things, and he'll come
Hmm.
help me kind of take a
Hmm.
step back and be like, okay, here's what we can and can't do. Let's not dwell too much on trying to do it in this like creative way, but like here's the best way that we can actually ensure that continue to have the momentum to get a client
Yeah.
finance and all that. So it's part of me. It's the creative effort, and because in my role in the partnership side, I'm here to like figure out solutions to complicated problems. To work, assist our partners with everything from writing their white papers about specific things that they want to do or that they want to share within their organization
Mhm.
to a specific client need. So I often will have advisors that'll be like, I don't want to get a client release or consent to like release information. So here, I'm just going to give you no names. I'm just going to give you the details. What can we do here? And being able to kind of like untangle, multiple properties that are held between holdcos and personal, and like what should we do
Mhm.
here for like tax efficiency and mortgage interest efficiency. Um, I really enjoy that part. Like that's also a
Mhm.
really exciting thing to be able to
Mhm.
untangle that mess and
Mhm.
be able to do it. So like while I may not necessarily be playing guitar as much anymore because of like my young family and running a business, I do get that joy out of the creative element that comes from putting a deal together.
That is so obvious. You're lighting up like a firecracker. That smile just got
Yeah,
radiant. I love
yeah,
it. So, as you're thinking about creativity, I'd love if you're up for sharing.
sure.
What is your vision for what is your vision for Pilot next? Like, what are you creating in your mind in terms of changing the industry, impacting the industry, elevating Pilot to new heights?
Yeah, it's so we in terms of my specific role in handling partnerships, um, we really love the partners that we have.
Mhm.
I'll actually take a step back. So we obviously want the business to grow,
Mhm.
but I've also started to realize now, having done this for 15 years, we
Right.
don't have to work with everybody, which is a really hard thing for me to admit because
Ah.
I'm such a people pleaser. Like that, my
Mm.
whole thing, and part of what I think has led to some success is that I've definitely not put myself first in some cases. I've
Right.
I've I've put I've put clients first. I've put expectations first, um, and sometimes people aren't a fit. There's certain people that are just, and you're trying to push a square peg through a round hole, and it's just not good. So being able to identify in terms of partnerships, those that are, I just love them. We're
Ah.
friends. I can spend time with them. I value what they do. I recommend them to clients.
Hmm.
They're easy to refer because I genuinely trust them. I believe in
Hmm.
them. I know that they are great stewards for their clients. And so and the type of client that you typically will get, or like the types of referrals that you will often get from those same people, are the same people. Like, you
Yeah.
know, people that you enjoy
Like
working
attracts
with.
like.
Totally. So I think that we're at a position now where we're happy with growth. We're obviously continuing to grow. My part of my role is assisting our existing partners, but also starting to add on new ones. But I'm not going to force it, right? So
Right.
those that I'm, let's say, looking to add on, I genuinely am curious about who they are. I understand people might initially be guarded, And
Hmm.
I get that. So it's not like I'm expecting that people are just going to be like totally open right from the beginning, from the first, networking conversation or call. Like it's just not in our nature. But
Hmm.
over time, if we can start to develop that relationship, they're asking me questions about myself. They happen to like, maybe by the fifth conversation, they maybe know I have a daughter or what her name, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. Um, it's those types of relationships that it's like I'm all in and continuing to look for those. So yeah, in terms of growth, we're super happy with where we're at. I'm continuing to find these people that we just jive, and it's a good
Yeah.
fit. We're we've been in BC, like the company has been in BC for like we initially bought a book of business, which we then kind of have grown into what Pilot is now. But it's been operating for over 40 years, predominantly in BC. We're now doing a large effort to grow within Alberta as well. So we're
Nice.
licensed. We're licensed within BC and Alberta. We can assist with mortgages by with our brokerage across Canada, but BC and Alberta are kind of like our main
Hmm.
areas to grow, just
Hmm.
because Alberta is a very different type of client compared to BC. Like Calgary and Edmonton are very different clients compared to Vancouver.
Right.
And so we're just
Mm.
looking for a little bit more diversity in terms of our actual client mix.
Mm.
So those are the areas that we're looking to try and grow.
Nice. And what does growth represent for you in terms of um, your joy when you light up like I want to see those eyes light up again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's two parts. Like one is obviously Um, revenue generation is just, how can you not look at that, right? In terms
Yeah.
of like your ability to
It's
continue
a
to
good
grow.
metric, tells you it's working.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. So, in terms of growth, we're always looking to increase funded mortgage volume, right? So that's an element to let us know that we're doing more for families, being able to do as many transactions for families as well. Um, and then yeah, like I said, honing in on these relationships with clients that we love and they adore
Yeah.
us. They truly value our advice. That because we do annual reviews with all of our clients, so we assist them with the initial transaction.
Hmm.
But in addition, our commitment to them is that we're going to follow up every year to remind them of specific program or policies that are built within
Right.
their lending options. Then also start to ask questions about like where is life
Yeah.
taking you, right?
Great.
Oftentimes people are
Beautiful.
like, we're thinking about having another child. We're thinking about, maybe we're outgrowing this place. Like we can capture that at that
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
And let's say, for instance, if you're a self-employed client who has just recently incorporated, like what are some of the things that we can do in collaboration with your accountant
Hmm.
so that we can start to get you into a much more bankable position 2 years from now,
Right.
right? But if we had not asked that question 2 years earlier,
Right.
it's a non-starter in a lot of cases, or it's a more expensive,
For sure.
type of financing. So we can identify that. So like when we do those annual review calls with our clients, they're happy to take those calls. They're that type of personality. We
Yeah.
can steer them, and just as much if let's say they're dealing in challenging situation where, for a time there, a lot of people who had variable rate mortgages were really experiencing so much like
Hmm.
stress coming
Hmm.
from that as interest rates were going up, their payments were going up. So helping them identify what options they may have,
Hmm.
whether we should be looking to lock in at this point in time, what they could experience if rates continue to go up, kind of removing some of the like what's going to happen,
Yeah.
and worst case scenario kind of thinking
Yeah.
um, is really something that we and so like a lot of these people who experience this really uh, kind of challenging time are still strong appreciative clients of ours that are like, I really help you, I really
Hmm.
appreciate helping me through that.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm hearing so much. You kicked us off with depth and the long game early on. And here it's just coming right back. You're still, even though that transaction is at some distant point in the future, you don't know when or if, you're still showing up on a regular basis to be in service. and continuing to emphasize the importance of understanding the unique needs of each individual and being in service of those. I really just want to highlight that and honor that and respect that because it's rare. And
Mm,
it really, sure, you're leveraging your people pleasing trait
mm,
and your desire to go deep. So there's the beauty of that is that those are internally driven.
mm,
So it's not an artificial behavior. So people can actually trust it more,
mm.
which is spectacular because we know that you're already driven that way. You can't help yourself. So,
Right,
yes, it's serving you and yes, but you're having fun at the same time and it's
right.
authentic and genuine. So beautiful. So I'd love, Damon, for as we're, going through this, is there a specific story that you might like to share with us of when you a client that you love
Mm.
just something that really highlights a moment in your career that just brought you so much joy.
So I'm in Salt Spring right now. As you
Thank you
can
for,
see, this
yes,
is not my office.
from your semi break as you're,
Yeah,
experiencing the
yeah.
islands, the Gulf Islands of Vancouver. Amazing, beautiful.
Yeah. So I'll speak about one relevant client because they happen to also reside here, which is kind of funny. So clients referred to me initially from a realtor purchasing a property in Vancouver, while they kind of split time between Salt Spring and Vancouver, and we and it helped them. Let's say they were also incorporated, recently incorporated, legal professional. That was going through partnership track. So like there was some irregularities in terms of like the income composite that we were using for specific lenders, but
Mm.
being able to kind of work through that. We At the end of the day, we ended up accomplishing the purchase. But like these people became my friends.
Oh.
They literally delivered firewood to our home here because we ran out last night. And so we and through
Oh.
that, we've continued to kind of work towards what are some of the major goals that they would have, right? And eventually they'd like to build their own property here, looking for another property in Victoria as well because they like to spend time between Vancouver, Victoria, and Salt Spring. So um, it's coming, and I have a lot of like the place where I'm staying at now, which we're house sitting, is also a client. Like I'm saying, this is how connected I am to these people.
That's
Not that and it sounds like I'm just taking a lot from them, but genuinely,
well,
these
they wouldn't be offering if you hadn't
I
earned
know.
that in some
Yeah.
way, right?
This is how I got my fees paid. No, but I
Oh,
genuinely develop a relationship with these people because
yeah,
I really care about them. In supporting them, I'm also very much into networking and connection.
yeah.
So, for instance, connecting with professionals who may happen to be clients of mine, and addressing. So, I had another client just the other day who was referred to me from a new realtor that I haven't even met yet, but had been recommended to me through another one of their
Hmm.
colleagues, and he was just like, "I'm trying to get a better deal from Van City. What can you help me with?" Like, and I told him, I'm like, "That's a really like what they've prepared for you is a really strong offer."
Hmm.
And do you have all your banking there? He's like, I got all my banking there. I'm like, is there anything that you dislike about working with
Hmm.
them? No, I love them. I'm like, there's nothing for us to change. I'm like, if there's anything, what I'll do is like, if you want to leverage the fact that you spoke to me, I'm happy to send you an email so that you can actually stand on something if you want to see if you can negotiate a better deal. But like what you have is a great thing here. But then we started talking a little bit more about his industry, and he works
Mm.
in stone products. So like quartz countertops, that kind of thing. And I'm like, I work with tons of designers, interior designers. Would an introduction to a number of these different designers benefit you? And he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, actually, this would be pretty good. And I'm like, I also work with contractors. I'm like, do contractors also support you? So I was able to connect people through that. The property that they were initially looking at, they ended up not getting. It went into multiple offers.
Mm.
What Van City may be able to offer now versus what they might be able to offer 2 months from now when he decides to take another stab at a purchase could be different.
Hmm.
Lenders, that's the typical case
Hmm.
in the market, right? It's like there's
Hmm.
an ebb and flow where there's lenders that maybe are looking to be more aggressive at one time and not in another. But the fact that I've maintained the connection with them to be
Hmm.
genuine and honest about what I can and can't do, take the interest in what it is that he does professionally and being able
Hmm.
to help him in that professional field, like you're not getting that. anywhere else. And that's
Right.
something that you would only generate. And I also told him, I'm like, hey, I've never had a referral from this realtor before. If you can come away from this conversation, this is again, the currency. If you can come
Yeah.
away from this conversation and say, hey, I had a great conversation with this
Yeah.
person. And while they might not be able to like immediately give me the
Yeah.
better rate or whatever it may happen to be, they were genuinely interested in what I did, and I think
Hmm.
really could provide a lot of value. So
Beautiful. It's just spectacular. What I'm hearing is you are writing musical score.
fair.
So much collaboration. And like we talked about earlier, the ecosystem. And, I saw you again light up when you talk about loving your clients. I agree with you. I am the same. I absolutely love my clients. So we're both fortunate that we're in that place and
Mm.
just really want to honor everything that you shared with us today, Damon. It's been absolutely spectacular and just a joy to listen to how you have created success for yourself and also for your entire ecosystem. It's beautiful. How might our listeners find you if they wanted to reach out and get in touch?
Our website is this gets misspelled all the time, so I don't. So it's wearepilot.ca. So
Okay.
wearepilot.ca.
Hmm.
You could just type in Pilot Mortgage Group into Google and we'll come up there.
Great.
Um, my personal email address is damon@wearepilot.ca. So if anyone ever wanted to reach out to me and be able to discuss if there's a mutual benefit to working together or they have a question about their own mortgage, whatever it is, happy to take that anytime and discuss it. Um, you can find us on Instagram, social media, blah, 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 blah. But I would say, again, leading back to the personal connection, what I specifically do is trying to find and identify where there's a value to
Hmm.
working together and assisting in whatever capacity. And it doesn't have to be that you're just referring me clients. It could be like, again, accountants that are really good at what they do that I could really benefit, could
Hmm.
recommend to a client to assist who needs their help. So yeah, I'm happy to connect and discuss anytime.
Amazing. Well, it sounds like anybody who gets the benefit of being in your ecosystem is going to be very well served.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Thank you so, so, so much for today. I really appreciate the time, Damon, and we'll look forward to catching up another time. Thank
Thanks,
you
Michelle.
too. Okay, take good
Okay.
care. Bye for now.